Hey guys, going to give you a look at the Angels Cup app where you can taste test and review coffees. Any coffee you want. It's completely free. It's got a great interface, and I'm just going to walk you through a tasting that I just did, starting at the top. So I'll go back in a second to show you where you begin when you're starting a new tasting, but at the top you'll see the name of the coffee, and it's just a number here because Angel's Cup sends these blind samples to you so you don't know anything about the coffee ahead of time, and they're all labeled with numbers, and that number is linked up to a database that has the Roastmasters notes on what they found in the coffee. So at the end of this whole process, after you taste coffee, you get to see how your notes compare to the Roastmasters notes. So that's pretty cool, and it's definitely a great way to learn, not only because you're kind of training yourself to sense new things and to look for certain things in your coffee, but you also have a point of comparison when looking at an expert's notes, albeit it's on their own coffee, so they might be a little bit biased. Anyway, starting at the top, you just say what color the beans are, and so this slider here gets everything up to nearly black, and it only has to do with the whole beans themselves, not the final brewed cup and the appearance of that. Excuse me. And then you're going to take a look at aroma, or take a sniff at aroma. And the way I usually went about this is, or I should say, the way I go about this is I sniff out the whole beans, and then I take a sniff of the ground coffee, and then I also take a sniff of the brewed coffee. And I actually inhaled some coffee up my nose, so that was very pleasant. But you get to explore this flavor wheel here, and they have general categories. So if I wanted to add, if I knew I was sensing flowers of some sort, I can choose within flowers what I was picking up, and you can see lavender is already selected. To deselect, you just tap it again, and then just a view of all of the things, all of the flavors or aromas you've picked up. Just tap on that, and it shows a list right here. And you could also add custom aromas by just typing it in right there. Then you move on to taste, and this is like a 10-point scale for each of these 4 categories. So aftertaste, how good is the aftertaste on, or how pleasant is the aftertaste on a scale from 1 to 10. Complexity would be how many different flavors and aromas you're picking up. If there's a lot of them throughout the course of the tasting, then it's going to be more complex, and hence would have a higher score. Sweetness, I think, is pretty obvious. And then bitterness, which actually retracts from the score. All the other things add to the score. And you can see how easy it is to mess things up if you have a fat thumb like me. Then we go down to acidity, and you basically just chart the intensity, so how strong, how bright, how acidic is that coffee, and how good is that acidity. So I've scaled this as a quality of 9, intensity of 9, and you can adjust this however you want. So that's pretty neat, but beware of fat thumbs like mine. And then when you scroll down to body, it's the same thing, except we're talking about mouthfeel. Syrupy coffees would have more body, more weight, and this coffee that I just reviewed, number 173, has a lot of weight, and I considered it to be good quality. It's not an icky feeling in the mouth, so that's how I determined that. Finally, we get into the nitty-gritty stuff, the flavor of the coffee itself. So when you're taking your loud slurps, what are you picking up on? And it's the same process as the aroma before. So here are mine listed. and we move on to taint. So these are any bad flavors that you pick up, and that has its own flavor wheel and some pretty funny stuff in here. I saw something like sweaty, and yeah, there it is, sweaty. It reminded me of how my girlfriend described one of the coffees that we sampled yesterday. She described it as a sweaty Russian armpit. Granted, that was through a cupping in our first one ever, so it wasn't entirely accurate, and not really reflective of how we would brew the coffee. But I digress. And then the easiest part, how much did you enjoy the coffee that you just drank? So you can just adjust it here. Gives it a nice little description, or you could just give it a numerical rating from 1 to 10. And then you could add in your final notes. So this is what I wrote about the coffee, and future iterations of the app that they're apparently working on now are going to have stuff where you can enter the different brew methods used, the different brew parameters, which is kind of the stuff that I listed in these final notes. So then the last thing you do is hit complete tasting, and it will give you a summary which starts with the name of the coffee. So this is an Ethiopian coffee. It tells you about the processing method, so this is naturally processed, and then it gives you the score that you gave it, which is calculated through their own system that I think is slightly based off of the Specialty Coffee Association of America, but I will link to that. They say that it's less about kind of what to criticize in the coffee for quality control purposes and more about the fun and enjoyment of the coffee itself. So here's where you compare it to the Roastmaster, and it just gives you a side-by-side of what I wrote and what they wrote, and you can see the only commonality is, at least with the aroma that we picked up, was lavender, and looks like this was pretty similar for us. You can see the dotted line as the Roastmaster, and so it really produces these cool, almost infographic like summaries, and it's a lot of fun. And you get to see the Roastmaster notes at the end. I clearly need to work on developing my palate, or maybe my palate is just different from the Roastmaster, which is totally okay. But in any case, this is kind of an overview of the process, and then you can share it on Twitter, Facebook, Google+, and Pinterest, which is cool. So I'll go ahead and tweet that right now. No, didn't work this time around, but it's worked in the past. Anyway, go back to the home screen, and then you can see all of the coffees you've tried. You can look at the summary. You can search for the coffees. So this is really a great app. My only complaints would be that sometimes my finger slips and I hit some of the wrong things, and I would like to have that feature with the brew parameters and brew methods used, which they're already developing, so I guess I can't complain about that. I mean, I think this is a near perfect app, and considering it's free, I think this will for sure replace my coffee journal. 33 cups of coffee is what I use, or at least I used before, but this is cool because it's all stored in my phone. So once again, this is the Angel's Cup coffee tasting app. Angel's Cup service itself I've already reviewed separately, and plans start at $8.99 a month for just the flight tasting samples, and then the black box, which is what I reviewed, is $19.99 per delivery, and you get 11 ounces of coffee, so 4 2.5 ounce samples. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe if you like this video.